His name was Marcus, 34 years old, software engineer at a firm in Austin, Texas, making $92,000 a year. By any reasonable measure, he was doing well. He had a decent apartment, a car that worked, he went out on weekends, he bought things when he wanted them. He wasn't living extravagantly, but he wasn't depriving himself either. And yet, every few months, without fail, Marcus would sit down to check his savings and feel that same quiet dread. Not much there. Again, he'd do the mental math. $92,000 a year. After tax, roughly $65,000. That's over $5,000 a month landing in his account. And somehow, by the 25th of each month, he was watching his balance like it was on life support. He wasn't buying designer clothes. He wasn't gambling. He wasn't sending money to a Nigerian prince. He just spent it on nothing specific, on everything in general. And every time he tried to figure out where it went, he couldn't. Not really. There were the obvious things. Rent, food, a subscription here, a dinner there. But it never added up to the full number. There was always a gap, a silent drain he couldn't locate. Marcus wasn't bad with money. Marcus had a psychology problem disguised as a money problem. And the reason nobody had ever told him that is because most people don't know the difference. If you just felt something watching that, a little recognition, maybe a little discomfort, that's not a coincidence. Because Marcus is not a real person, but his situation is. It belongs to millions of people earning what should be enough and still arriving at the end of the month wondering where it all went. And here is the first thing I want you to hear, clearly, before we go any further. This is not a discipline problem. It is not a willpower problem. It is not a, you just need to make a budget problem. If it were that simple, you would have solved it already. You're smart enough. You know what a budget is. You've probably even made one. The reason it keeps happening has nothing to do with what you know about money. It has everything to do with what your brain has learned to feel about money. And those are two completely different things. Today, we're going to pull that apart. We're going to look at the actual psychological reasons why smart, capable, well-earning people consistently end up with less than they should. Not because they're failing, but because they're running software they never chose to install. There's a concept in behavioral economics called hedonic adaptation. It sounds complicated. It isn't. It means this. Whatever you have right now, your apartment, your phone, your food, the kind of coffee you drink in the morning, your brain has already stopped counting as a luxury. It's now the floor. It's the minimum you need to feel normal. And here's where it gets interesting. Hedonic adaptation doesn't just apply to the things you own. It applies to your spending behavior itself. The amount you spent last month, your brain now considers that normal, expected, the new baseline. So when your salary goes up, and this is the part nobody warns you about, your baseline goes up with it, almost automatically. Not because you made a conscious decision to spend more, but because your nervous system quietly recalibrated what normal feels like. This is why people earning twice what they earned 5 years ago often feel no more financially secure. The number went up, the floor went up with it. The gap stayed exactly the same. Marcus didn't decide to spend 90% of his income. His brain decided for him, quietly, gradually, without a single deliberate choice. Now, layer on top of that something researchers call expense invisibility. Studies consistently show that people underestimate their discretionary spending by between 30 and 40%. Not because they're lying to themselves, but because the human brain is genuinely terrible at tracking small, frequent purchases. Your brain evolved to notice big things: a threat, a storm, a source of food. It did not evolve to remember the $6 coffee on Tuesday, the $12 lunch on Wednesday, the parking spot on Thursday. Each of those individually feels like nothing. It's just coffee. And individually, they are nothing. But they are never individual. They are relentless and cumulative, and your brain genuinely loses track. So when Marcus sits down trying to figure out where his money went, he's not being dishonest with himself. He's experiencing a known limitation of human cognition. His brain was never built for what modern life asks of it financially. Here is the part that most finance channels will never tell you. For a significant portion of the population, spending money is not primarily a rational activity. It's an emotional one. When you're stressed, your brain looks for relief. When you're bored, it looks for stimulation. When you feel out of control, it looks for something it can control. When you've had a long week and the world feels heavy and exhausting, your brain looks for dopamine. And in the modern world, dopamine is available at the click of a button. It has a shipping estimate and a returns policy. Neuroscientists have studied what happens in the brain during a purchase. The anticipation phase, browsing, adding to cart, considering, activates the brain's reward circuitry in almost the same way as other dopamine-seeking behaviors. The brain doesn't fully distinguish between I am buying something because I need it and I am buying something because I feel bad and this is the fastest available relief. And here is the cruel part. The relief is real, but it's brief, and it doesn't address the original feeling. So the original feeling comes back, often with a layer of guilt sitting on top of it, and the cycle starts again. This is not a character flaw. This is neurochemistry. But there's a third layer, and this one goes even deeper. Psychologists who study financial behavior use a term called money scripts. These are the unconscious beliefs about money that you formed in childhood, usually before the age of 10, by watching the adults around you. If money in your house was always tight, you may have learned that money is temporary, that it doesn't last, that you might as well spend it before it disappears, because it always does. If money was associated with conflict in your home, arguments, stress, tension between your parents, you may have developed an unconscious link between having money and something going wrong. And so some part of your brain quietly works to get rid of it. If money was never discussed at all, treated as a private, almost shameful subject, you likely never developed the internal frameworks to think about it clearly as an adult. These aren't theories. They're patterns that appear repeatedly in clinical research on financial psychology. And they matter because they operate entirely below the level of conscious decision-making. You don't think, I'm going to spend this money because I learned as a child that wealth feels dangerous. You just spend it, and then wonder why. You were outspent before you started. Now, I want to zoom out, because everything we've talked about so far, the lifestyle floor, the emotional spending, the inherited money scripts, all of that happens inside a system that is specifically designed to exploit it. The modern consumer economy is not neutral. It is engineered at extraordinary expense and sophistication to find every psychological vulnerability we've just described and use it. The variable reward loops in your shopping app are the same mechanisms used in slot machines, designed with the same goal: make stopping feel harder than continuing. The one-click purchase removed what behavioral economists call the pain of paying, the mild psychological friction that used to naturally slow down spending decisions. That friction was small, but it was real, and it was deliberately removed. Buy now, pay later services are built on temporal discounting, our brain's tendency to undervalue future pain relative to present pleasure. I'll worry about the cost later is not laziness. It is a feature of human cognition that an entire industry has constructed itself around. This is not a conspiracy. It's just the world we live in. But it means that the person trying to save money is not only fighting their own psychology. They are fighting their own psychology plus the combined intelligence of some of the best-funded behavioral engineers on the planet. You were, in a very real sense, outspent before you started. Why the standard advice doesn't work. And this is why just make a budget doesn't fix it.
Not because budgets are bad. Budgets are fine. But a budget is a rational tool. And you now understand that the forces driving your spending are largely not rational. They are emotional, neurological, and environmental. Giving someone a spreadsheet and telling them to stop overspending is like giving someone a map and telling them to stop being afraid of the dark. The map isn't wrong, it just doesn't address what's actually happening. What actually moves the needle is understanding, not more information about money, understanding of yourself around money. Because the moment you can name the thing driving a spending decision, the emotion behind it, the belief underneath it, the system exploiting it, it loses some of its power. Not all of it, but some. And some is where it starts. So here's what I want to leave you with. Not a 10-step plan, not a fix, just one shift. The next time you make a purchase you didn't intend to make, or the next time you reach for your phone to buy something you don't strictly need, try something. Don't ask, should I buy this? Ask, what am I actually trying to feel right now? Not as a way to stop yourself, just as a genuine question. Am I bored? Am I stressed? Am I tired? Am I trying to reward myself for something hard? Am I avoiding a feeling that's been sitting in the background all day? You don't have to do anything with the answer. You don't have to put the item back. You don't have to journal about it or meditate or call your therapist. Just ask the question. Just notice. Because awareness is the first thing that changes. Not behavior. Awareness. Behavior changes later, slowly, as a result of that. Marcus, the guy from the beginning, didn't fix his finances by making a budget. He fixed them the year he got honest about what his Sunday night spending was actually about. It was about the week ahead, about a job that ground him down, about the brief, manageable feeling of control that clicking buy gave him when everything else felt uncertain. When he understood that, really understood it, he didn't stop spending, but he started spending differently, more deliberately, with less guilt, and over time, with more left over. That's what this channel is going to be about. Not the math of money, the psychology of it. Not what to do with your money, how to understand what you've been doing with it, and why. If this landed for you, if something in here felt familiar, then you're exactly who this channel is for. Subscribe if you want more of this. Every week, one video, one piece of the psychology of money that nobody explained to you when you needed to hear it. Next week, we're getting into emotional spending triggers. Specifically, why stress makes you spend in ways that have nothing to do with what you actually want, and exactly what's happening in your brain when it does. I'll see you then.